I never planned to be a hero. I wasn't a soldier or an explorer or anyone whose name would end up carved into some memorial back on Earth. I was a logistics contractor, one of the thousands of forgettable humans who ferried supplies between outposts on the fringes of known space. My job was simple: deliver crates, don't ask questions, and get paid enough credits to forget how far from home I drifted. That was before the day the sky over Keros 9 burned. Keros 9 was a dry, copper-colored world orbiting a red dwarf, valuable only because it sat near a cluster of hyperspace lanes. The Coalition maintained a small garrison there, mostly alien forces, with a handful of human auxiliaries like me. I'd been planetside for less than 12 hours, unloading medical rations, when the alarms began to scream. At first, I thought it was another drill. The Coalition loved drills. But then the ground shook hard enough to knock me off my feet, and the horizon lit up with streaks of plasma fire. The Nethri had come. They were insectoid raiders, fast, brutal, and infamous for striking border worlds before vanishing back into uncharted space. I'd seen holos of their attacks, but nothing prepared me for the real thing. Dropships tore through the atmosphere, their hulls glowing white-hot, while anti-air cannons thundered from the garrison walls. Civilians to shelter, someone shouted over the comms. I ran. The supply depot was already chaos, crates overturned, personnel scattering. I ducked into a maintenance corridor, heart hammering, when an explosion rocked the building. The lights flickered, then died, leaving only emergency strips glowing red along the floor. That's when I heard her. A low, strained sound. Not quite a scream, more like a breath forced through pain. I followed it without thinking. She lay at the far end of the corridor, half propped against a shattered bulkhead. She was tall, taller than any human woman I'd known, with long limbs folded awkwardly beneath her. Her skin was a deep shade of cobalt blue, patterned with faint bioluminescent lines that pulsed weakly. One of her armored pauldrons had been torn away, and beneath it, dark blood soaked the floor. She wasn't human. She looked up as I approached, eyes glowing a soft silver even in the dim light. For a moment, we just stared at each other, two strangers from different worlds, caught in the same nightmare. Don't, she said, her voice rough but clear. Leave. They'll come back. I swallowed. You're injured. Yes, she said flatly, as if stating an inconvenience. That is often what happens in combat. I almost laughed, hysterical and terrified. Can you move? She tried. Her face tightened, and a sharp hiss escaped her lips. No. The sounds of battle echoed closer, metal tearing, weapons firing. The corridor trembled again. I had a choice. Leave her and save myself, or stay. I knelt beside her. I'm getting you out. Her eyes widened slightly. Human. You cannot. I can try. She studied me for a heartbeat, then gave a short, humorless smile. Very well. If you die, know that it was unexpectedly honorable. I slid an arm beneath her shoulders and another under her knees. She was heavier than she looked, dense muscle and alien armor. But adrenaline did wonders. As I lifted her, she gasped, one hand gripping my jacket with surprising strength. Sorry, I muttered. Do not apologize, she said. Just move. I ran. We made it out of the depot moments before another blast collapsed the corridor behind us. Smoke choked the air, and debris rained from the sky. I staggered under her weight, legs burning, lungs screaming, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The nearest shelter was a med bunker on the edge of the garrison. Coalition soldiers, mostly Virexian and Talari, were dragging wounded inside. When they saw me carrying her, their posture shifted instantly. Clear a path. one of them barked. They recognized her. As they took her from my arms, the sudden absence of her weight nearly sent me sprawling. My hands shook, slick with her blood. "She's a blade captain," a medic said, glancing at me with something like respect. "You did well, human." I watched as they rushed her deeper into the bunker, doors sealing behind them. Only then did I realize my entire body was trembling. The battle lasted 6 hours. By the time it ended, the Nethri were gone, leaving wreckage and bodies in their wake. The garrison held, but barely. Fires burned across the plains, and the air smelled of scorched metal and ozone. I spent the night in the shelter, unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her silver gaze, felt the weight of her in my arms. The next day, a coalition officer summoned me. I was escorted to the infirmary, a sterile chamber filled with alien technology. She lay on a raised platform, her wounds sealed with glowing medical bands. Her color had returned, and the bioluminescent lines along her skin pulsed brighter now. She looked formidable, even lying still. When she saw me, she pushed herself up slightly. "Human." I stopped a few steps from her. "You're alive." "Thanks to you." Her eyes softened just a little. "My name is Aelith, of the Talari Vanguard." "I'm Jonah," I said. "Just Jonah." She considered that. "Jonah, you carried me from the field when you had no obligation to do so. I couldn't just leave you." "That answer," she said quietly, "is rarer than you think." She told me she'd been leading a counterstrike when a Nethri plasma round breached her armor. Talari physiology could withstand much, but even they had limits. If I hadn't found her when I did, she would have bled out alone in that corridor. "You altered the outcome of my life," she said. I shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable. "I just reacted." She smiled again, this time genuinely. Reaction defines character. I thought that would be the end of it. A brief meeting, a thank you, and then we'd go back to our separate lives. I was wrong. Over the next weeks, Kairos 9 became a temporary home as repairs dragged on. Aelith recovered faster than the medics predicted. Talari healed well, but she spent her recovery walking the garrison, observing, asking questions. Often, she found me. At first, our conversations were awkward. She spoke with the directness of a warrior, asking things humans usually danced around. "Why do you take contracts so far from your origin world?" she asked one evening as we watched the twin moons rise. "I guess," I said, thinking, I didn't feel like I belonged there anymore. She nodded. "Then we share that." She told me about the Talari, how they were raised communally, trained for defense from a young age, taught that strength existed to protect, not dominate. She spoke of battles and losses with equal calm. I told her about Earth, about oceans and rainstorms and cities that never slept. She listened with fascination, asking me to describe the smell of wet soil, the sound of wind through trees. One night, she admitted something unexpected. "When you carried me," she said, "I was afraid." I looked at her, surprised. "You don't seem like the type." She exhaled slowly. "Talari do not fear death. But I feared insignificance. Dying unseen. Forgotten." I remembered that corridor. Dark, broken, silent. "You wouldn't have been forgotten." "Perhaps not," she said. "But now I know." The day came when my transport was repaired. My contract ended. I packed my things, feeling a strange heaviness in my chest. Aelith met me at the landing pad. "You are leaving," she said. "Yeah." She studied me for a long moment. "The Vanguard is redeploying soon. There will be more battles." I forced a smile. "Try not to get hurt this time." She stepped closer. "I cannot promise that. But I can promise this. If I fall again, I hope it is someone like you who finds me." Something in her voice tightened something inside me. "I don't want you to fall at all," I said. Her hand, four-fingered, warm, rested briefly against my chest.
"Jonah,
"You once carried me when I was at my weakest. In Talari culture, that creates a bond." I swallowed. "What kind of bond?" She met my eyes. "One that does not fade with distance." My transport lifted off an hour later. From the viewport, I watched her grow smaller against the copper plains until she was just a blue speck beneath the stars. Life didn't go back to normal. No matter where I went after that, what contract I took, what station I docked at, something had shifted. I'd faced death, carried it in my arms, and lived. It changed how I saw everything. Months later, I received a message on a secure coalition channel. It was from Salith. Her unit had been reassigned near a trade hub I frequented. The message was brief, formal, and ended with a single line. "I would like to see you again." When we met, it wasn't on a battlefield or in a burning corridor. It was in a quiet station cafe overlooking a nebula, colors swirling like spilled paint across the void. She was fully armored, every inch the blade captain again. But when she smiled at me, it was the same woman who'd trusted a stranger to carry her through fire. "You look well," she said. "So do you." We talked for hours about where we'd been, who we'd become since Caro's 9. She told me she'd requested this posting. "For what reason?" I asked. She tilted her head, Talari amusement. "Curiosity." I laughed. "That's a dangerous trait." "Yes," she agreed softly, "but it leads to meaningful change." As we parted, she clasped my forearm, a Talari gesture of respect. "You changed my life," she said. "Not because you saved it, but because you reminded me that strength and compassion are not opposites." I watched her walk away, understanding something at last. Carrying her hadn't just saved her life. It had shown me who I could be when it mattered. And that knowledge stayed with me, steady, unyielding, as the stars carried us both forward into whatever battles and bonds awaited us next. I didn't realize how much she had changed me until the moment she almost lost me. The trade hub orbiting Varelian Prime was supposed to be safe. Neutral territory, layered defenses, no active conflicts within a dozen sectors. That illusion shattered when the emergency siren screamed and the station lights dropped to crimson. Salith reacted instantly. She shoved me behind a cargo pillar as the first explosion rippled through the docking ring. The shockwave rattled my bones, and fragments of alloy rained down like metallic hail. "Nethri," she said, already drawing her plasma blade. "They tracked me." My heart pounded. "You think they came for you?" "They do not forget defeats," she replied grimly, "or commanders who humiliated them." The station descended into chaos. Civilians scattered. Automated defenses fired blindly into the void as sleek Nethri boarding craft punched through the hull. I watched Salith move, every motion precise, lethal, beautiful in its terrible efficiency. She was the blade captain again, forged for moments like this. And suddenly, I understood something with terrifying clarity. If I stayed behind her, I would always be the one she protected. If I stepped beside her, I would be the one who chose to stand. A Nethri shock trooper rounded the corner. I didn't think. I grabbed a fallen pulse rifle and fired. The recoil nearly tore it from my hands, but the shot landed true, dropping the creature mid-lunge. Salith looked back at me, eyes blazing with something more than surprise. "You should not be here," she said. "I know," I replied, breath shaking. "But I'm not leaving." The fighting pushed us toward the outer ring, alarms blaring warnings of decompression. Smoke filled the corridors. At one point, A plasma blast caught Salith across the side, burning through her armor. She staggered, and suddenly it was my turn to catch her. I wrapped an arm around her, bracing her weight. For a heartbeat, time folded in on itself. Months ago, I had carried her from a battlefield, terrified and uncertain. Now here she was again, injured, breathing hard, trusting me without question. Her hand tightened on my sleeve. "Jonah, you do not have to." "I know," I said, "but I choose to." We made it to an escape pod moments before the corridor ruptured into vacuum. The pod launched hard, slamming us into our seats as the station shrank behind us, burning, broken, but holding. Silence fell. Salith's breathing slowed. She turned her head toward me, silver eyes steady despite the pain. "You carried me again," she said quietly. I smiled, exhausted. Guess it's becoming a habit. Her fingers laced with mine, no armor, no formality, just warmth and intent. "In Talari law," she said, "a bond forged twice under fire is no longer accidental." I swallowed. "What is it then?" "Chosen," she answered. Weeks later, after the coalition finished debriefings and the Nethri threat was neutralized, Salith came to me with an offer that changed everything. The Talari Vanguard had extended her command, an independent unit tasked with border defense and first contact response. She was permitted to choose her crew. "I want you with me," she said. "Not as cargo, not as someone to protect, but as my partner." I thought about Earth, about drifting contracts, about who I'd been before Karos 9. Then I thought about who I'd become. "I don't know how to be a warrior," I said honestly. She stepped close, resting her forehead against mine, a Talari gesture of trust reserved for equals. "You already are," she said. "You simply fight differently." I accepted. Years later, people would tell stories about the Blade Captain and the human who stood beside her. About battles won not just by force, but by restraint. About borders defended without conquest. About a unit that carried the wounded, no matter the species, no matter the cost. As for me, I never stopped being the man who carried her from that burning corridor. But now, when the stars stretched ahead of us and danger loomed beyond the next jump, I walked at her side, no longer